Welcome back. 14 minutes after 6 o'clock on this Friday morning. Let me welcome Kimoy Thomas, the Deputy Director of the Counter Trafficking Unit. She joins me on the Zoom line. Good morning, Deputy Director. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, Jason. Thanks again for having me. And good morning to all the viewers and listeners.
I think it's going to be a very important discussion, and I want to start things off by asking, really and truly, what does the CTU do, that Counter Trafficking Unit that you are Deputy Director?
Okay, so the CTU, which stands for Counter Trafficking Unit, we are a specialized unit under the Ministry of National Security, and we are also the agency that is tasked with coordinating the government's response to human trafficking. So what happens is that we respond to all reports of human trafficking. We are not a police agency. We are actually civilian-based, but we also have police officers supporting us. So because of that, the police officers, they handle all the investigations. They take statements from victims, from suspects, and then they go about arresting and laying charges. On the civilian side, we treat with the victim care, because victim care is very important, because victims of trafficking would have undergone a number of traumatic experiences. So we have to reach out to various entities to ensure that their needs are met. So many of them, they need psychological counseling. They need to learn English, because many of our victims do not speak English. It's not their first language. They need medical attention. They need dental care. So we liaise with all the various agencies as well. We also do public awareness, because that is one of our mandates as well, to get the word out there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that lasted roughly 2 years, we suffered in that regard, because most of our sensitization had to take place virtually. And it's always better to go out and meet with persons, because they tend to be more forthcoming with questions and, ideas, because sometimes the members of the public have some really brilliant ideas on how to assist victims or how to assist with getting the word out there. So that is what we do.
When we consider the scourge that is human trafficking, one must ask, who's at risk? Who are the most vulnerable in that scenario?
Okay, so the most vulnerable persons, right now, the majority of our victims come from Venezuela, because we know they have an economic and political issue over there. So a lot of them are coming into our countries illegally. Now, when they come into the country, what happens is that they don't have any documentation. They're here illegally, so they're vulnerable, because they're looking for jobs. They are willing to place themselves in risky situations just to survive. So these are the persons that the traffickers tend to target. So a lot of our victims, they are actually recruited through social media. So someone will reach out to them on Facebook or WhatsApp and tell them, you're looking for a job. Obviously, they'll say yes, because they have families, they have children to support. And then they come here thinking they would work as a waitress or a housekeeper. And then when they come, they realize the situation is totally different, where they are forced to provide sexual services. That's the females. And then we have males as well who come to work to support their relatives. And then they find themselves in situations where they're working, they're not getting paid, they are not getting breaks because, we all need breaks. We need bathroom breaks, we need lunch breaks, we need tea breaks. They don't get those things. They don't have proper places to sleep. Sometimes they are working in situations where they are not provided with good, equipment, with safety equipment. But apart from the migrants, we too, all of us, Jason, we are at risk as well. And that is why we have to be so careful with what we are putting out there on the social media, especially children. For those of us who may have children, we have to be careful as well and monitor what they are doing, who they are interacting with, especially since, again, with COVID, most of our children would have started communicating with their friends online. Then there are the games the boys play, such as Fortnite, the girls are into Roblox. All of these are breeding grounds for traffickers, because what happens is they would notice certain patterns in children. Sometimes children post, well, I'm depressed, I have no friends. They're very sharing. Our new generation, they're very sharing. And traffickers, they pry on that. And they would reach out pretending to be friends their age. And, next thing you know, they lure our young persons to places, and before you know it, they could become a victim as well. So we all have to be very mindful out there. Even women, we have dating apps out there as well. You have to be careful who you're giving your information to. There are times when men would put fake pictures up, and the woman would think she's talking to someone who's Jim. And in reality, it could be a 50-something-year-old man who, is a sex addict or just a pervert. So we all have to be very careful.
We know of the scenario with the Venezuelans, and up to last weekend, We saw the TTPS affecting our bust and making, a terrible situation at least come to an end. We saw the rescue and some teens were involved in that scenario. But what other nationalities from your time there at the unit you've seen in this unfortunate circumstance? We know it's really tough with our neighbors down south, but what other nationalities you've seen being caught in the web?
Right. So concerning that issue that would have happened last week, that matter is still being investigated. However, with regard to the nationalities, right now our largest victim population comes from Venezuela, unfortunately, but we've also had victims from Guyana, from Haiti, and what we tend to realize is that the majority of male victims are victims of labor trafficking, and they come from India.
India. Interesting.
Yeah.
What advice you want to give to those who are looking on so they can pass the word on, or they can internalize the advice themselves to safeguard themselves from said human trafficking? I know you would have put out advice there concerning the children, but when we talk to the adults, those who, as you said, seeking a better life, find themselves probably in a circumstance where passport is seized, no documents, and working these long hours, how can they safeguard themselves or come out of that situation?
Right. So that is a very difficult question, in the sense that, each victim would have different experiences and be able to handle certain things. So, for example, we've had victims who were able to run away or steal a phone and put through a phone call. So my best advice would be to take the CTU's hotline number, which is 800-4-CTU, which is 800-4288. That is a number that everyone in Trinidad and Tobago should know. So if you see anything that looks suspicious, please call the hotline and we would respond. Our police officers, they conduct the intel exercises and then do the necessary investigations to decide, if it is a potential case of human trafficking. In the case of victims, talk to someone that you trust. If it is that you get to go outside, which is very rare, just pass a note to someone. Some of them would have passed notes saying, help me, and that would have helped them in the long run. So it's things like that you have to do. We at the CTU, we intend to do a lot more sensitization. We have already done a lot of work with NGOs who work specifically with the migrant community, and we are hoping that by us sensitizing the migrant community, they in turn will pass the information on to their relatives in Venezuela. Some of our victims are also very helpful because they don't want other persons to experience what they have experienced. And they too have been very vocal, and they reach out to their relatives, their cousins, their sisters, their brothers, and tell them, listen, if you're coming to Trinidad, do it legally. Don't be taken in by all the false advertisements, because when you come here, it's something totally different. So that is the word that we have to get out there. We also have to get that word out to our locals as well. We see all the time on the TV and on the newspaper ads for barmaid wanted. I combine barmaid and waitress. Barmaid wanted, waitress wanted, and then when you go, you could be kidnapped. So you have to be very careful when you're responding to those advertisements to go with someone that you trust, preferably a male figure. So those are some of the things we could do.
To do the work you do, obviously money is needed, serious money, and how close are we to losing funding from the United States if we do not fall within a certain index? I know they're looking on, and they would have made certain reports concerning Trinidad and Tobago. Are we close to being defunded from the U.S.?
Yes, regrettably, we are dangerously close to losing funding. Really and truly, we have a lot of work to do within the next year, because I know because of time, I wouldn't be able to go through all the tiers, but right now, Trinidad and Tobago is at a tier 2 watch list for the second year, and which it means basically that we have not improved significantly from the last year in terms of investigations, prosecutions, victim care, public awareness. So all of these things we have to get together to do. And it's not just the CTU responsible, but again, as I had said earlier, we are the coordinating agency. So all members of state, all state entities have to come together and work to get it done. So it's possible we can get it done, but we have to get it done in order not to be downgraded.
I know the CTU is without a director at this point in time. Will you be applying for the position? Is there any push and urgency to fill that particular role at this point in time?
Well, honestly, I haven't decided as yet, but by law, because we don't have a director, I, being the deputy director, will act in that capacity until a new director is appointed. And right now, I would say the unit is running fairly okay because I have really good relationships with all of the agencies, and the staff that I have here, we are all very dedicated to getting the work done. So that is our main focus right now.
How can a report be made to the unit? How can folks contact you all and, if indeed somebody passes a note, help me, or they recognize some kind of shaky business happening across the road, how can they reach out to share information?
So our hotline, that is the easiest and most efficient way to reach out to the CTU, and I would have given the number. I don't know if perhaps CNC3 could share it at the end of the program, but it's 800-4CTU, which is 800-4288. So that hotline is 24 hours a day, so they can call that number. And the good thing about it is it's also an anonymous hotline. So you don't have to give information about where you're living, your name, anything like that. You could just call and provide the information.
I want to thank you for coming on this morning. You were frank, you were open, very honest. You was able to tell us at least what's happening on the ground, what you are able to see and experience, and the fact that this scourge must be addressed immediately. And we wish you and your team the very best in trying to give the victims, or at least redress, and make this into something that is not attractive at all to anybody who even thinking about putting their fellow brothers and sisters, no matter where they're from, through something like this. So I want to thank you, Kemoy.
Thank you so much, Jason and CNC3, for having me this morning. I truly appreciate it because we really want to get the word out there. So this is definitely a good step in the right direction.
Give thanks, all the best, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, you too.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Listen, one is too many. We have to make sure this is stamped out of the society, and the work must begin with people like Kemoy and her team and fellow citizens. If you see something, say something. Yeah? The scourge of human trafficking must come to an end. Let's head across now after the break and touch base with the Unit Trust Corporation with their plan to generate business and to get you in that particular place of success. Details after the break.